Hi guys, welcome to my first ever video on this channel, and it's going to be about Advent of Code. So I've done Advent of Code uh, the year before this and the year before that. So I think 2022 is when I started, and I absolutely fell in love with it. One of my friends introduced it to me, and I hated this whole competitive programming space. I like developing things and coding once in a while, but I think my love for writing challenging code started like because of this Advent of Code. So basically this is an annual event in which for 25 days you get challenges which are very Christmas themed. It's fun, and initially sometimes it's easy as you start and it gets hard, or like it's kind of surprising. One day it might be really hard and the other day it might be very easy, so you can't say how it goes. But generally by the time you reach day 19 things get a little harder, and when I had started out I was really shit at it, at like competitive programming or anything DSA related, and this has helped me a lot in that way. So I keep asking people to join me in this adventure, but also this time I decided I'll record it. Since I develop in JavaScript, it'll help anyone else who's starting out their journey here. Okay, cool. So before we start off with the first question, let's do a little bit of setup so that we don't have to work so hard every time in setting things up. So what we'll do is I'll create different folders for each day, and in that, since Advent of Code has two parts, you solve one and then you go to the other part. We will have two parts, and then so this will be part 1 JS, and for this we will have some input. Generally we have a dummy input and we have the actual input. So let's do that dummy input and the actual input. Okay, cool. So let's test if this is working. Wait, one more thing I have forgotten to do is we have to initialize npm so that we can use modules and all. We will leave it at the default, so whatever else I need I can edit it later. Cool, so we have this here and we need it to be of the type module. So this will allow us to import things that we export in different files. First I'll just check if this is working, if my node is working correctly, and in this we have part 1. Well, this works. Now in dummy input, and then we'll save this. I'll go to this, let's import, and here okay, did not provide a default. Oh shit, I forgot to export it. Export default d input. Actually I can, instead of making it a default, I can put both the actual and dummy into the same file, but it helps me if I can visualize it once in a while by just going into the file and checking what things are like. So that's why I'm separating it out. Okay, this works, and we'll do the same thing for the actual input, which I'll just call just input, and this will be actual input. Let's make this input. I like the way Advent of Code works, where you don't have to write your code in a certain place or a certain way or in a certain language. You have the freedom to choose what you want to do, how you want to do it. You can literally like write these things in Excel or write it on a paper and find the answers, even though I think that'll be a little difficult in some of the cases. So let's test this one last time. Okay, cool. So we're done with this. What we'll do is we'll just paste this here 0 0, which will be like whenever we need to, in going forward, whenever we need to start a new question, we can just come here, copy this and make it that day's thing. For part 2, I think in some cases, should we have two separate paths for each thing? Because in some cases you can just change a few things, and yeah, let's keep it as two separate paths just in case someone decides to come to my repository and check it. I'll push this code to my GitHub repository, which is named admin of code, which I've been using for 2 years now, and I'll link it in the description. Now let's go back to reading the question. Day 1. So I don't start exactly when the challenge starts. Anyway, I'm not competing in the global leaderboard. I'll just do it for my own sake and see how many days I can go to. Cool. I won't be reading this whole thing out, but I'll give a summary. I mean, I'll read it, but I won't be reading it out loudly. This year's theme is, this year's challenge is that this person, this chief historian, is supposed to be present at the big Christmas sleigh launch, but he's missing, and so we have to find him. And it's, as we go, we'll collect more stars, and we should have 50 stars so that this whole event can happen properly and we can save Christmas. So we are going to look for the chief historian. Now, when this chief historian went missing in his office, he left a bunch of clues, and they are basically all these location IDs. So these elves formed two groups, and they went looking for these IDs, and they found two different sorts of lists which have, like, they are not similar at all. So now we have to find, in today's part 1 of the question, the challenge is to find the distances or differences in between the smallest from the first list and the smallest from the second list, or actually the first smallest, and with the first smallest, what is the distance between them? As in, here the smallest we can see is 1, and on the right side the smallest is 3, so the distance between them is 2. That's what it's explaining here, that the smallest number on the left list is 1 and the smallest number in the right list is 3, so the distance between them is 2. We have to do that for each of them, as in starting with the smallest to the largest of the first list and the smallest to the largest of the second list. So, and yeah, ultimately we have to sum them up and get the total distance. So let's do that. I'll probably speed up my coding part of it and explain why I've written code that way. Okay, this is day 1, part 1. Our dummy input is, I use this because it helps us with multi-line. That's what we're going to put there, and okay, so this first part is us just processing the input. So we have the first list and the second list. I think there's a better way to do this, but for now I'm going to just take whatever comes to my mind and then do it. And in case we need to refine it better, I will do it in the next iteration. So for now, what we're doing is we're just taking two lists, the first list and the second list, as per the story. We're taking some input in this method, which is process input, and we're just splitting it. So what's happening here is the dummy input and the actual input have 3 spaces in between it. We're splitting it into 2 parts, the first and the second. So it becomes like an array with 2 elements, the 3 and the 4, and then the 4 and the 3. Now in the next part of this code, we're running a loop in which we go through each of the elements, which is, comma separated array of the 2 things, and pushing the first list elements to the first list and the second list elements to the second list. What I should also do here is we should make it a number. So now if I run this, we should get numbers. Perfect. So now the next part will be for us to sort it and find the differences. So let's do that. Okay, so now what we're doing is so I returned the values that we got from there, our first list, which is stored in this list. So we have a new method called the sort and find distance, which will give us we will give the list, and we have the two lists we sorted. In JavaScript we use this to sort in ascending order, and if you do b minus a, then it sorts in descending order. In our case it won't actually matter, because in which way we are adding it up doesn't matter. So you can do largest to smallest or smallest to largest, but we have to make sure that both of them are sorted the same way. So we're running a for loop in which we are iterating through every element of the list and checking the distances between them. Since the distance between, the number of items in each list will be the same, are just running it with this. We can check for that edge case as well, where if the list number of items in each list is different. But I think in this particular case we don't need to do it, we can just trust it. And also with a little bit of cheating, you know that the number of items are the same, but that could have been an edge case. So it's, if you want to do it the right way, that's a good thing to check, I guess. So anyway, yeah, so we add up all the distances and then we get the output. I got the wrong output initially because I forgot to add it. It's been some time since I wrote code in JS, so I keep I use C# once in a while and Python, so in that there is a len and size and all that. So yeah, I messed up a few times, but here, yeah, we're done here. So now we get the distance, and finally we can console log the distance. Let's clear this, save this, and we're getting 11, which is what we were getting even in the input they had given us. Opening that here. Cool. So what they got here was 11. So now we should test it with our code for the actual input. So let's do this. We'll console log the distance. Let's do this again. And just sometimes this can go very wrong, so I think it's better we comment it out. Now for the moment of truth, let's see if what we've done is correct. Cool, we got that. If we didn't get that, that would be kind of embarrassing because it is quite easy. Okay, now let's move on to the next part. Okay, so what's happening in this part is, so we saw that the distances were quite huge. So what they're saying now is probably the two groups of elves were trying to read the handwriting of this guy, and it was really bad. So they might have misinterpreted what they saw in the lists. What they understood from the list. So now what we have to do is we have to find a similarity score, which is in their logic to take the number from the first list. Starting with the first, we'll iterate through each of them. So we have 3 here. We'll check in the second list how many times 3 occurs. So here it is 3 times. So we'll multiply the number with the occurrences in the second list. So 3 into 3 is 9. So that's one part of the similarity score. Similarly, we'll go through 4. 4 occurs once, so it's 4 times 1 because it only occurred once. So then we get 4. And so we'll go on that way. And whatever we get, we'll add it. Cool, so let's code this. Okay, cool. So we're back to this part. I created a new file called part 2, and here what we're doing is, this part is the same where we're processing it. So in this part we find a similarity score based on the list that we have. Based on the list that we have, and so we have a score and we have an occurrence map. So what this occurrence map is basically we are trying to find, trying to create a map, I mean a hash map of, or a dictionary you could call it, of each element in the second list and how many times they have occurred in that list. So then this is what it will look like. So 3 has occurred 3 times, 4 has occurred once, 5 has occurred once, 9 has occurred once. So how this will help us is, when we go through the first list, we can see how many times it has occurred in the second list just by looking at this map. That will help us. So at least this is my idea. I think this should work out well even for the bigger list. And here, so then we are running the for loop once here and another for loop here for list 1. Here we're checking in the occurrence map. If it is not null, only then we are incrementing the, only then we are adding on to the score that we have, which is a multiplication of the element in that list, which is like, suppose we started with 3 in that dummy, we start with 3. So what is the occurrence of 3 in the next one? We multiply that, the element and the occurrence, and we add it to the score. So now we're getting the correct answer, which is 31 according to the dummy input that they're given us. We'll try the same thing with the actual, I can name it differently, but yeah, I'm just like trying to ignore the problem till it's an actual problem. Cool, let's see if this works correctly. Here we go. That's it. We've done day 1 and this was quite easy. I'll put it up on GitHub repository, and if you have any doubts you can ask me. Alright, see ya, bye.